I started really engaging directly with gender studies and then feminism when I started graduate school at the University of California at Berkeley. I had come from Nigeria with a bachelor's degree in political science, but I decided to study sociology because I wanted studies that dealt more with ideas about the family, human social relations, and all that. But immediately I encountered Western notions of gender. Women have been subordinated forever, in all places, at all times. I was surprised at the way in which these Western ideas were being universalized. And I said, really? Women are this, women are that. I am not sure I have come across such women in Nigeria where I was coming from. So that was my first initial encounter and the beginnings of applying my critical mind towards Western feminist ideas. Western ideas are still at the center of African studies. They could not but be, because of the people who do African studies. And the biggest African studies organization, for example, in the world, is the one in the United States. And it's dominated by white people. When you go to an African studies meeting, you go to panels, enter rooms upon rooms, and you could be the only black person. Africans who are trained in African studies too are trained in this Western orientation. So that is the challenge, how to get away from it and how Africans should be able to think, as I like to say, from where they are standing, thinking from yourself outwards rather than the other way around. Unfortunately, Western ideas, Western people, Western knowledge making, publishing dominate African studies. For Africans to create knowledge from their own perspective, this should be the normal thing, because Europeans create knowledge from their own perspective. Barcelonians create knowledge from their own perspective. The person from the smallest village in Europe creates knowledge from their perspective. But the whole of Africa is a big struggle to even begin to identify what is important to us and how to address it. And then, of course, there's always the question of resources, which is a big one, because when it comes to academics, publishing is big. It's hard, because who controls the publishing houses? And how many publishing houses are there? Controlled by Africans that can do this. And the West, they continue to publish. People talk about education being a way of empowering people, but unfortunately, a lot of the education we get is that people become good colonial subjects. People become subordinated in their thinking. You get that from the miseducation too. So we cannot talk about education as a blanket term, as an abstract or universal. The question is, what sorts of education do people get? Where does it come from? And most importantly, I think any education should teach you critical thinking so that you can think for yourself first before you accept anything. We must talk about the institutions that they have planted, that they have promoted ideas. And when we talk about colonization, I mean, part of colonization, as I see it, is the destruction and the demonization of our spiritualities and the promotion of Christianity and the like, to the extent that so many colonized people demonize their own spirituality and accept whatever the West is saying, because in this hierarchy, they've also thought about Jesus as white, and the implications are just plain terrible, horrendous, if you ask me. But part of the activism is also to change the schools, to resist government impositions. For example, in the US now, some places are banning books because they don't want to talk about race. What is our role right now? Are we going to wait and continue to see that? So the resistance must be constant. And at all levels, you should resist oppressive institutions, you should resist oppressive laws and practices. And everybody, not just leave it to the young people, you know. To say gender is a social construct is to say that gender is not inherent in human nature, it is not natural, it is man-made, and literally man-made. But today, I believe gender has been universalized. Like many Western ideas and many ways of doing things, gender has been imperialized and globalized around the world. And yes, it is a construct. And it can be constructed, and it's being constructed in different ways. Even when new things develop, you see the ways in which gender creeps in. Look at the way in which TikTok is gendered, in the way in which young women are reacting to TikTok, young men, even though TikTok is a new thing, the new media, social media is a new thing, but you already see the way in which these things are gendered. And those things just prove that gender is a social construct. Race, gender, class, and other social factors that create hierarchy, advantage, and disadvantage, they are entwined. Because some of these ideas about the entwinement of race and gender have been so well analyzed and theorized by Black Americans. And it is from them, their experiences, that we get the word intersectionality. And intersectionality is about how gender and race work together to create huge disadvantages and huge moments of oppression for Black women, for example. And in that way, when you look historically at the position of Black American women and compare it to Black American men, it was never the same. Even under slavery, Black American women had to work growing crops like cotton from sun up till sundown, but they still have to cook, have babies, and the like. So there is no way you can analyze their situation and just say, oh, it's a gender situation. Because if it were just a gender situation, then they would be in the same position as white women, and white women were their masters too. So we must always keep race and gender together. And then, of course, there's the issue of class, there's the issue of location, geography, and so on. Of course, it's always changing, but not for the better. The edges are changing, but the main idea that men are superior, women are subordinate, doesn't change because it is a rigid hierarchy. But I also want to quickly say that we cannot look at gender by itself in a globalized world. When we think about gender, race is always a part of it because there's a gender-racial hierarchy, racial-gender hierarchy, which is a rigid hierarchy. The gender hierarchy is rigid in the sense that no matter where you go, no matter what changes have taken place, the male is still at the top, the female at the bottom. You move here, move there, it remains that. So it's a rigid hierarchy. The same thing with race. It's a rigid hierarchy. You move here, move there, wherever you go. The white, the closer you are to white is on top, black is at the bottom. So there hasn't been much change there in several hundred years, several centuries. And I do see a lot of activism, just room for more from the younger generation. I hope that they'll do better than my generation, for example. But I always think it's a much more difficult life for young African women right now. I think that you don't even have to go to Yoruba society or go abroad. I had meetings with Afro-Spanish, Afro-Barcelonians, Black people born here. And their experiences are important. And so some of the issues I'm talking about is not far away, it's right here. And so people must engage with each other here and start with their community. White, black, whatever. If we're going to change the world, it's still one world. I know some billionaires are moving to Mars, but for now, the rest of us are here. And so we have to work as communities to protect the earth and ourselves. And it has to start with the local. How do we create a world in which every human being is considered human and worthy? Because the ultimate thing about racial gender hierarchies and all those hierarchies is about the fact that some lives are considered worthy and some are not. And we continue to see this in the world we live in today. So the big question is not about reversing anything, is can we create a world in which each and everyone's life is worthy, and beyond the life of humans, the life of other living things. We're destroying the earth also because the dispensation that came out of the imperial colonized world that the West created does not value life of other living things. And so it's resulting in the destruction of Mother Earth.